Okay, excellent. Okay, well, welcome. Hi, Morgan. Nice to meet you. Great. And hi there.
Hello.
Hi. And hi, Jacob. Jacob, nice to see you. Um, Hi, Kevin Deland. It's really nice to see you again, Ardell. It's been a few years, actually, probably. Um, and hello, Erica. And hi, Christine, Joanne. Nice to have you all here. Welcome to this particular sharing. Um, so I guess we'll begin. So my name is Karen McAllister, and I live and work at Clear Sky Meditation Center. It's a spiritual conscious community, and I think in my write-up, I had many of us in the meta-modern space understand the need for new economic models that support conscious community. But how do we actually live them? So at Clear Sky, we've been exploring this question in real time. So we've been doing this over 20 years, and we're actually new to the whole meta-modern language. We were actually doing this, not knowing that we were actually in the meta-modern world. And so we were actually putting language on what we were doing, what we have been doing over the last 20 years. And I'm just very excited to share it with you. But first of all, I just want to see who's in the room, and I just would love to hear where you're calling in from and what's your interest. Hi, Mary B. Nice to have you with us. Yeah, if you could just undo your mic, popcorn style, and what's got you interested in this particular sharing?
I can share. I'm Derek. I'm in Southfield, Michigan, which is pretty close to Detroit, and I work with a lot of spiritual and psychic and energy workers, and uh, yeah, I think like there's a challenge of solopreneurs to become self-sufficient, especially. Um, well, basically, it feels like the economy doesn't work for people that are trying to do something outside of, corporate life, and actually doesn't work that often for people in corporate life. So it feels like there's a very strong need, but I've got, I kind of work with a demographic that is often struggles. So,
Hmm.
seeing how to do something that kind of supports alternatives is very relevant, right?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I'm a solo entrepreneur and I live and work in conscious community. So I'm one of your group. I'm in that group that you're talking about. Nice. Thank you, Derek. Anybody else? Morgan or Ardell or Jacob? Jacob, I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, I'll jump in. I um, am coming to this from I'm a freelance uh, editor, and I have been for a couple of decades successfully, and I and yet um, I'm also doing some nonprofit projects that I need to seek funding for, and I just recognize that. Even though I've had some great sessions with Karen before, I mean, it takes time to really get, we all have such a, um, I don't know, we're kind of inculcated this, the dominant culture has this scarcity mentality, and it's it's very persistent, and I find myself only at times being able to kind of rise above that. And so I love this chance to jump in for a refresher.
mhm. Thank you, Ardell. It's lovely to have you back. Anybody else?
I'm sorry I missed what you said, Ardell. I think I froze there for a second, but I just wanted to share that I came here because I have a lot of fear about money, and because my belief about money is that it's a agreed upon fiction um, that is unfortunately used to justify systems of injustice, and is used to measure and value different people as being more and less worthy in various ways. And I would really like to be able to kind of envision like a post-money future. And I would also like to be able to myself become braver about talking about money, because I feel like, there's prohibitions in our society to actually talk about money. So I thought, well, what would be like the most radical thing I could do? I could just tell everyone my net worth and how I plan to try to survive the rest of my life, and then it's like wouldn't it be actually like interesting, like if we actually like all did that, and then we all were like, okay, like we'll figure it out together.
Nice. Yeah,
Like
thank you.
and I'm thinking like I'm just casting a global vision.
Thank you, Morgan. Thank you very much. Well, let me just jump in and then I'd love to hear your thoughts afterwards. So Morgan, that's exactly what we've done in Clear Sky, and I just wanted to share a positive story about what we've done. So just to share some hope and some incredible results as a result of being open and revealing about one's money in a community. So I call this from vision to reality, awakening through money and community. And so, like all of us here, it all started with a vision, a deep longing to create a sanctuary where spiritual practice could flourish and where we could dedicate ourselves to awakening, and where we could support each other, in living a very meaningful, conscious life and bring that out to the world. So we believe that, if we held our vision strongly enough at Clear Sky, that if we practiced with enough dedication, the resources we needed, the money would flow naturally. And in some ways, it did, or the resources did, but what we didn't realize at the time was that money itself would become one of our greatest teachers, challenging us, humbling us, and ultimately awakening us to a deeper level of interdependence. And that's the story I want to share today, because there's so much bad news today going around, and there's all this wonderful quiet work going on, and Clear Sky is one of them. And I hope that you will come away having a new thinking, or a fresh new thought about this whole topic, because as Morgan just beautifully explained, this is people's normal stories around money, right? So Clear Sky, we were born in 2004, but we're from the Namja lineage. So our lineage goes back to the Buddha. We're Buddhist and integral oriented. But we started this particular center here in 2004. So at first we didn't think much about money. Some of us avoided it altogether, believing that focusing on finances was unspiritual. I'm sure some of you identify with that. And others worked tirelessly, assuming that sheer effort and devotion would be enough to sustain the community. And so we relied on donations, particularly two big donors, and our teachers, two teachers who were bringing in the revenue, and the belief that if we just kept going, things would work out, right? But beneath the surface, just as Morgan explained, there was a collective money shadow, right? So a mix of magical thinking, a mix of fear, and as Ardell and Morgan talked about, deeply ingrained scarcity beliefs. And some of us held on to the idea that money was dirty and money was dangerous, while others struggled with guilt around receiving or giving. So by 2010, we were going bankrupt, and we decided, one member came up and said, why don't we do money coaching? Why don't we bring this into the organization, and let's look at ourselves in this way we never had before. And so we did it as a collective group, and we examined our personal beliefs around wealth in community, in group, revealing ourselves, revealing how we had associated money with lack of worthiness, or money with a deep sense of not enoughness, chronic sense of not enoughness in the being, right? We noticed where fear and avoidance were blocking the natural flow of resources, right? So really intense vulnerability when the money subject comes up. Somebody told me, I'll more or less tell you more about my sex life than I will about my money life. I thought that was kind of humorous. So we really confronted the unconscious mindsets of scarcity, of guilt, of attachment, that kept us from truly embodying the generosity we aspire to, because all of our community is sort of based itself on the gift economy. Everything that I'm sitting on and I'm looking around is coming from a donation or from gifts in kind, right? And our spiritual practice, our teachers live by the bowl, right? So we're really going upstream to all of this. So really, we started to doing the mental state work behind money. We started to see money as a spiritual practice, and with this awareness, we realized that we needed practical financial skills just as much as we needed meditation practice. And we began tracking our income and expenses mindfully, watching our habits with the same presence we brought to the cushion. And we start learning about ethical business models and revenue. Now, these for spiritual explorers, this is like, you really got to do a lot of inner exploration and really bring the shadow on the table to get to a place where you can actually talk about revenue generation, right? And that was a few years in the making. So we started learning about revenue generation, not as a compromise, but as an extension of our values. So we use that deep spiritual, inner reflective way of being that we had to look at this thing that everybody doesn't want to look at, money. So we stopped assuming money would just take care of itself, and instead developed real financial literacy, making budgeting, planning, and sustainable income part of our daily practice. So we did this actually through using something called the money archetypes. So we would say, oh, are you in your innocent archetype today? Or that behavior, what's that behavior now? So we got a language that felt safe to talk about in group, because there's so much shame that people feel around money, and they measure their self-worth with the amount of money they have in their bank account. So, this topic really triggers people on so many levels. And as a spiritual community, generosity has always been at our core, but we saw we weren't fully embodying it because we weren't actually looking at the shadow. So, real generosity isn't just about giving freely, it's about creating the conditions where giving and receiving can flourish. And so that meant confronting the ways our money culture was still shaped by fear, guilt, and transactional thinking, right? So so really we really normalized financial transparency, making sure no one felt alone or ashamed in their money struggles, right? It's so easy to talk about it now after 20 years. And we cultivate a culture of trust and reciprocity, where members who had more offered microloans to those in need, free of secrecy and free of shame. And we really strengthened our Karma Yoga program. We have a service program recognizing that energy flow isn't just about money. It's about time, it's about energy, and the spirit of shared contribution. So, once we started facing money together, something powerful happened. And I would say, if I described it, I would say real interdependence emerged, because our relationship with money is now, it's used to divide and conquer. And so true is simply looking within as a community, as a group, this powerful thing happened where this interdependence and this trust started to emerge just from doing, I call it the root chakra work, because money is located down in the groin and the root chakra. And so once you start to deal with that, you can go into the sacral chakra, which is to do with creativity and expansive thinking. And then you can go and go into the solar plexus, or the power chakra, where you can start looking at your issues in the community around power. And that's what we've done. In order to create this kind of trust, we have very much put money, sex, and power on the table. as a community, and worked really hard at that in order to get to the heart level where you can then truly start to love and learn how to love and learn how to give and receive, right? So just from a lower right quadrant perspective, about building, it was through doing all the first three quadrants, and the top right, the top left, and the bottom left, we were able to start building a regenerative financial system within the community. But as Derek said, it's all outside. It's outside the box. It's not the norm, and we're sort of working on our own a little bit. So I'm really curious to hear other people's stories and how we can collaborate and how we can co-create together. And please reach out to any of us at Clear Sky. There's quite a lot of us in the Limicon conference this year. So we designed revenue generating offerings that aligned with our values. We really put a lot of work into personal retreat cabins and online courses. We began doing online back in 2014. And then, to speak to Derek, we started looking at ethical entrepreneurship and how do we balance livelihood with continuing with bringing money into the center and to people's livelihoods. We embedded financial transparency into our governance, ensuring that decision-making around money was clear and open. And we fully integrated Dana. Dana is, as I said, our teachers live by the bow, and Dana is another word for generosity practice, into our financial systems. So people can give from the heart, and we have systems set up that really promote that, and help that make it really easy for the person. And we educate the person along the way in different systems in order for them to be able to practice generosity in a way that develops and strengthens their heart. And we did lots of little things, and I'm just trying to give you the big over-level view here. So we created a social enterprise lovers fund. We called it the Self Fund, to offer microloans to Sangha members launching businesses that could support the community, Yeah, so looking back, we can see that that money was never an obstacle. It was just part of the path all along, but we just didn't realize that. And so individually, we had to heal our relationship with money. Collectively, we had to shift from scarcity to trust. Practically, we had to learn real financial skills, and structurally, we had to build regenerative economic systems. And it's still a total work in progress. But there is one thing that's clear, and I'm going to end with this, is when a community commits to financial awakening, money becomes an ally in the path of awakening itself. So I'm going to end there. And I'd like to hear from all of you, like, what challenges around money have you faced in community or in your own life? And and what new ideas does this spark for you? And how can we together build financial models that support the awakening of all beings? Now, they're big questions. This is a taboo topic, so if you don't feel like sharing, that's absolutely fine. But and if you have any questions, further questions that arose as a result of my little chat here, please, if you could raise your hand, your virtual hand, and we'll get to you. Derek. And Kevin.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't tend to use shadow work as language much, but it sounds like there's a lot of integrating the shadows around money, and I agree with that. I think that several years ago I would have looked at that as, oh, you didn't really answer the question, but having done a lot of that myself, I do think it's a transformative process that creates a completely different relationship. Is that, am I articulate? Is that concur with how you feel about it?
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. If what I'm hearing you say, I could go straight to these are the results, these are the new systems, these are the economic models. But from my experience, we can't get there until we do that collective, individual and shadow work around money, because we haven't been educated about it. Most people had a lot of stress about it growing up. There's a lot of cultural conditioning around money that's not very wholesome. So yes, am I answering your question?
Yeah, and I think like I think a lot of people would understand that, okay, you can't be good in relationships if you've had a lot of trauma around relationships. Like the healing has to happen before the result you want. And I think you could say something similar around money, that if 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 our responses are all trauma based, it's hard to be successful. But the trauma doesn't define it. The trauma can be stepped outside of, and then there's something very different.
Right. Right. Yeah, thank you, Derek. And I feel like we created money as a human race, right? It doesn't grow on trees. It's not natural in nature. And so because we created to make things easier, I found that the healing is in community, it's in group. The untangling, the tangle of what we have done with money is true. The group consciousness is what my experience has been.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. Okay, yeah, because I think like it's generally personal in my experience, but I love the idea of as a community, you know, that sounds very powerful. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin.
Yeah, you said something, a quick aside about different money archetypes. I was just curious if you could go into those and what they are.
Yeah, thank you. So there's 8 of them. I always like to use a car analogy. We'll say an electric car analogy, and you have 4 archetypes you kind of want to have in your car. Well, 2 of them you want to have daily, and we call it the warrior archetype in the driver's seat of the car and the magician archetype in the passenger seat. And so the warrior part of you, these are all parts. If you know internal family systems, they're all parts of us that a few of us got together and we started to see patterns, recurring patterns in people, and we got to see what did a healthy patterning around money look like. And so in the driver's seat, you've got the warrior, which is that part of you that knows in any particular moment how your money's doing, know how to, hold on, okay, great. And no, knows the practical financial skills to save money, grow money, is very, is quite careful around money. Just is really quite balanced and quite calculating at the same time in their approach to money and bringing the funds away from greed and towards love. And then the magician part of you is here. Everyone's magician is here. They're interested to see how they can balance up their relationship with money, right? Are they being too tight? Are they being too loose? Are they in avoidance? Are they rejecting? Are they pushing it away? Are they running after it? So it's like the magician part of you is that part of you that's looking to integrate money into your value or your mission in a balanced kind of way. And then in the back seat of the car, you've got the creator artist and you've got the fool. And they're in the backseat of the car because they only come up at certain times in your life, usually transition, right? So creator artist, maybe you're looking for a new revenue stream, maybe you have a new idea that you want to bring forward and be part of your livelihood or part of your offerings, or maybe you're getting married or divorced or whatever it is. So that part starts to go, well, how do I make this change? And once you decide on that change, you're using your warrior part of you to do the necessary research to make those changes. And then your fool is the risk taker. So is the opportunity seeker looking for that places that will bring your mission or vision forward, and then checks in with the warrior part of you to say, okay, is this a good idea? Does it hold weight? Is it in line with my mission and vision? Do I have a revenue plan? Is it the right time and space? All that sort of thing. So they're the 4 sort of wholesome growing archetypes that you want to be nurturing around money. And then there's 4 that they're red flags, really. So one of them is the innocent archetype, because we haven't really been educated emotionally or psychologically around money. We can have a childlike relationship with it. And so it turns out where if it's money, we might push it away or give it to our spouse or give it over to the bank manager or bookkeeper. So there's a kind of a huge fear of incompetency, this part of us that we may have. We all have it as children, but some of us don't grow out of it because we didn't have the necessary resources or conditions to fully grow in our relationship with money. So there can be fear of abandonment around this particular archetype. And then you have the victim, where people have been in innocence around money and then they've been victimized. So I would say the Bernie Madoff situation in the States many years ago is an example of that, where they gave him their money and it didn't turn out very well. So when somebody has a victim around money, there's usually quite a bit of, maybe there's a bit of abuse or a bit of hurt around money, and that has to be untangled and processed and before they can actually jump into their warrior and more positive archetypes. The other two would be the tyrant archetype around money. So this is part of us that feels a deep sense of chronic not enoughness in our being. So we feel that if we have enough money, it's going to be okay. So there's a kind of a focus on controlling money and controlling people and controlling events, because there's a belief that money is the only thing that's going to bring the safety that you need in the world. And then I think I'm missing one more. Oh, the martyr. It's the martyr archetype. So and we can be all these parts, and it's not who we are. They're just patternings and a way of naming your patternings and behaviors. It's like the top right quadrant around money so that you can disentangle them. So the last one is the martyr archetype. And that's usually it's somebody who was sort of very caring as a child and grew up and learned in order to get love would have to keep being of service to others at the expense of themselves. So they usually are very good at growing other people, but their finances are in a mess because they haven't learned to actually turn inward and help themselves around their finances. And you'll find a lot of people like this in nonprofit worlds, right? You'll find that a lot of people like this in spiritual centers too, this particular archetype. So anyway, that's a quick summary. Does that answer? I didn't expect that question to come up, but thanks, Kevin. And I don't want to be talking all the time, so please do share what came up for you and what resonated or what worked for you. Anybody else?
I guess I'll kind of respond with, since I asked a question, and maybe just like tell my story quickly, just to like see how these archetypes play out. And I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago. I decided I've worked a decent career as a software engineer, and I decided to just like stop working at all and pursue creating art. But I knew I had enough money to keep going, but it was like in a slightly unconventional manner. Like I had money in a 401k, and like conventional wisdom would tell you like, keep that until you're, what is it, 59 or whatever. Because if you withdraw before a certain time, you have to like pay the taxes on it. So conventional wisdom is like, don't do that. And I guess, yeah, I took a risk. Like it was a calculated risk. So I guess I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but the point is that like there were many times throughout the journey of after like cutting from like having a stable job that like where I was uncertain, but like, my daemon, so to speak, I kept getting signs like, okay, you're on the right path, you're on the right path. And it's ended up paying off in ways that are, yes, financial ways, or like financial adjacent ways. So I like to think like, yeah, just in terms of your archetypes, like the fool was the one that was kind of like taking the big risk taking, but it was checking with the warrior, where the warrior is like, well, like, okay, you could easily, if things go really bad, you could just get a job if you really wanted to. And the magician was like, and yeah, I just like, there was, the creator was playing a big role too. And actually, now that I think about it, like the innocent archetype, it's like keeping that money in like a savings, like a 401k or something, is kind of like the innocent archetype in a way, because it's like, oh, these banks know more like what this money, like I'm trusting them with doing this financial management or whatever. And like part of the courage it took to like not believe that storyline was like, well, I don't really trust the financial system. Like, like I don't think this is going to be the same world when I'm 59. So it's like there was a bit of that warrior playing out. Well, it was a calculated risk because I was like sussing out the vibes of like, well, I mean, between the climate and the political system and whatever, it's like I don't. So yeah, thanks. The archetypes are really interesting. So I'll have to take a look at the quiz on your website too. Thank you.
Yeah, please do. And I certainly we can chat and go through them more deeply if you wish. I'm happy to do that. And Kevin, you bring up a really good question, or, it is very precarious. I mean, we really don't know when you're 59, will any of that stuff that you've built up be there for you? And so, I'm seeing more and more from my own experience that it's so important to be involved in community in some way, right? The capitalism has rendered us with a lesser ability to actually be with people in a way, be good community citizens, or actually learn how to work with each other in a way that's generative and generous and kind. The capitalist system doesn't allow for that, really. So we're like, I've been living in community for 20 years, and I have found it an extraordinarily fulfilling, and yet in like a steep learning curve. I had to relearn things that maybe my ancestors just took for granted. Right. And I feel that's the real social capital is the real capital I feel currently and in the future. So I just encourage any of you, if you're not in community, to start thinking about it that way. How can you get into community? How can you start to build social capital? How can you start to build your heart to allow yourself to give and receive within community? I mean, that's where the real gold is. Anybody else? Any other virtual hands out there?
What comes up for me, and first of all, I want to say I'm delighted to see the phrase integral money. I've been like drafting on a book on that same topic, and it's a beautiful inquiry. Now, very specifically, the question that I'm with, and I'm curious what you found in the 20 years that you've mentioned during this, is I think a little bit to what Morgan was speaking of, in the very beginning. I totally get like compounding interest, right? And how money is how to put this. I understand that those who have money today, to a large extent, have so because they manage money well. That's, I think, there's just this warrior archetype. And the question that I'm with is, it seems like there's a lot of people who are experiencing suffering, I think we would say in a Buddhist sense, including and absence, just in general, physically speaking. And I guess there's a big overlap of people who have physical absence, they don't have their basic needs met, who also don't have good financial skills.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I see them kind of like going in tandem. That's kind of where I'm with right now. Now, the question that I have is, the kind of offerings that I want to do are for the people primarily who are in suffering, not for those who are already doing well. But as an entrepreneur, I have to question, well, the people who can pay me for my services generally are not the people who are suffering. So I think you get the conundrum, right? Or the apparent, at least, paradox. And I'm curious how you've solved this, or if you have.
I'm not sure I solved it, but yeah, thank you. Thank you, Jacob. That's a really interesting question. And what we're heading towards is, and what's come into my practice of late is, how do those that don't have wealth speak to those with wealth, and how does those that have wealth speak to those that don't have wealth? So again, it goes back to the mindset, because I've worked with people who are wealthy who go in to try and help those that are not, and actually get pushed back. So there's a gap there. a bridge needed to be built, because we're all humans at the end of the day, right? But there's a lack of a language between these two groups of how to understand each other and their needs. And so I guess I'm looking at how to bring those two groups together, and what's the language needed for the two groups to understand understand how to talk about money to each other, right? So, I think previously money has segregated us all into little tribes of haves and have-nots, and so I'm very interested in finding that middle ground. And the Buddhist way is all about the middle ground, right? And we don't, capitalism is about extremes. So I'm interested in how do you get to that middle ground with people. Does that help, Jacob?
Yes, and Erica, you shared like a link about a publication, a quiz that you have. If you find like a publication on this, if you come to something, I'd love to receive it.
Okay, thank you. And please, if you have some thoughts and some suggestions for people to ask questions, please jump on and share them. Derek.
Yeah, I appreciate Jacob's question. It's interesting. I think there is a kind of poverty mentality. There can be a poverty mentality that really is anti, um, and the idea of being helped doesn't really. So like, yeah, there is a very, very, very different conversation that isn't. It's hard to communicate. But I think like, I mean, my sense of money is at its root, it's a delayed exchange. I mean, there's one thing of value, another thing of value, and money just allows it to happen at different times. So, like, if there's people that don't have money, if you can find a way for there to be an exchange that's not financial, but time or effort or connections or, share with a friend or something like that, because I think there's also a real difficulty if somebody's giving and another person's receiving, it can really easily cause resentment instead of gratitude because it doesn't feel good. So, if there are other exchanges that aren't financial, and I'm curious, Karen, if you have like, but to me that feels like that's a big part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Derek. What you described is when somebody has more money and there's a give or whatever, and somebody's always giving and the other person's always receiving, it causes a power imbalance. And so what there's a tendency happen is the person receiving then tends to withdraw because there isn't that balance of giving and receiving and reciprocity between both people. So that's why I'm saying at Clear Sky, we really focus on money, sex, and power as well. Like, what is your issues with power? Because it manifests with money, right? Are you able to follow, or are you only able to lead? Following is a beautiful, beautiful skill to develop and really surrender to somebody else's authority, right? In order to then be your own authority and your own sovereign. So it's a huge topic. It's a huge topic. Mm.
Yeah, I'd be interested if you wanted to talk a little more about I think you mentioned something like micro lending to within your community. As Derek was speaking, it made me think of one of the ways just in my own life is like maybe in the past I would have just given a friend some money if they needed it, but this moving to more of like this kind of patient lending thing where it's like, here's some money because you can't get some groceries this week. Pay me back when you can. And then when the fact that they end up paying me back, it does sort of restore a sense of like balance from both ends of like, so I don't know, just how did your community handle that kind of micro lending? Any insights on what that looks like?
Yeah, we actually draw up agreements with each other, right? And we negotiate a lot, and we ask the person, how much can you pay back? What's reasonable? We talk about person's financial history. It's all very transparent, and we have developed excellent communication skills in the community. So if you make an agreement, if two people make an agreement and one fails to keep up with it, then there is in the culture, you instantly need to go and talk to that person and say, look, I'm going to default on this payment because this is happening in my life, and can we renegotiate? So we do have language of negotiation in our community that allows for integrity and honesty, and supports integrity, supports honesty, the continued sense of trust between two people, right? So there's a lot of formality in it, right? The idea of, look, here's the money and you can pay me back when you want I have found doesn't work in our community. You know, having really, really firm, solid, yet flexible boundaries is key to making it healthy and wholesome, right? Does that help, Brendan?
Yeah, it helps to hear thoughts around this in any area. I think, yes, it's interesting to think about within a community versus, I don't know, maybe it depends on what you're defining as a community in this context, because in the context I'm thinking of, it's more, I'm not necessarily living with this person. So if if the time scale is not completely fixed, then the consequences are not as obvious. I mean, but I do find though, yeah, when you do that, it's like there is that avoidant thing during that period. It's like once they have the money to pay me back, then suddenly they're back in my life, and it's like, oh, okay, you could have been here all along, but it's very natural. I get it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think one thing you need to realize with people's relationship with money is it's like opening a can of worms, right? A lot of people feel they've done something wrong with money they shouldn't have done, or they shouldn't have done something with money that they should have done. There's a lot of shame and guilt and all of that. And so when you lend money to somebody, all of that is going on in the background. And so the sooner we get this sort of topic into schools where we can talk about how do you actually emotionally manage money, how do you actually psychologically manage money, what's going on behind the financial decision making, I think this we'll have a healthier, more generative world.
I'm just thankful for the ways that you've shared already about how to, think about and process feelings and emotions about money and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the archetypes are a really awesome tool. I could kind of like feel, I was just listening and feeling a lot of things in my body of just kind of the recognition of the different archetypes and like different times that they've been active. And so, that just felt kind of like a familiarity.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I kind of I don't know like which archetype this fits into or if this is something else, but like the whole question that I have about money is if we could do this emotional language thing really well in our own bodies and teach it like you're saying to kids and like we really get it, then at some point can we let go of the whole fiction of money and just say like money's not a thing, and at the same time like you're talking about money being a tool that allows some types of spiritual growth and development, and so it's kind of like is it a tool of spiritual growth and development that humanity might one day evolve past because we have other tools that allow us to really like see and like support people's paths in life and thus, be able to really support ourselves collectively as a community. and support everyone flourishing. I just, I guess I'm just really curious how other people see these questions. And I also, I guess I have like this sort of like fear or self-consciousness, like maybe that's just me being an innocent about money and like money just is, and there's nothing you can do to make it go away. So just be with it, and like it's very confusing, but it's anyway, like feels like a huge relief to actually be able to talk about it. And if I haven't said too much already, just my last question is, how is it different if you're creating collectivity with people who you are living within a retreat center versus, you know, creating a new economic system that involves people who don't live in close proximity to each other.
Yeah, thanks, Morgan. Yeah, it's a great question. I'm wondering if I'm just opening up to the floor and maybe have any thoughts for Morgan on those questions?
I don't have a thought, but I would like to throw in the mix, yeah, kind of along with what she's saying, but also maybe specifically that relationship with children and money, whether there are children in that community you're speaking of, and how you've been cultivating money, a relationship to money with them.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for holding this space. I haven't followed as closely as I'd like, but I think a lot about these questions. And I've done various experiments. The big framework that's helped me is this idea of multiple forms of capital. And right now, financial capital is the easiest to measure in the form of money. But there's educational capital, social capital, aesthetic capital, and all the rest. There's probably, there's 10 that get listed. There's probably more than that. And I wish we could exchange or decide to connect or not connect more around these forms of capital rather than just financial. And I would say right now, the big issue is that there's been enough technological capital and legal capital and legislative capital that has somehow allowed these oligarchs to change their financial capital into electoral capital. And why are we buying stuff from them? And some of us have stopped, of course. It's a little too late, but we'll do it best we can. But yeah, and I love the point about money is so awkward to talk about. There's a lot of shame and guilt. It's worse than sex, or worse than a lot of other things. In most cases, we've had some great sexual liberation in ways, or at least freedom to talk about these things. But wow, money's the new frontier of hiddenness and privacy. And what is, I want to know what that's about. What would it take for us to open up our accounting books? What would it take to protect people who did do that from any sort of native things, as we now protect people for, we work really hard to protect people in other realms, because it might, I don't know, might do something to seeing the humanity in each of us.
Yeah, thank you, Daryl. Derek?
Yeah, I think Morgan, your question about like can we get rid of money, and I think that the to me there are a lot of problems with money, but I don't know that money is a problem. Like the access to money is a problem, or the consolidation of money is a problem, but in a kind of abstract way, money is just a tool of a transaction. And like you could say, like, well, like, should we envision a world without shovels? Like, it doesn't, at a certain level, without the judgments and beliefs, it's there's no reason to get rid of it. But the beliefs and the abuses and the manipulations are so powerful that that there are absolutely things that need to be addressed, But I think that part of the misconception is that money's the problem. There are problems with money, but I think it's interesting to consider that money itself isn't a problem. And I'm not saying that that's true, but I think it's really informative if you consider that, what happens, what are the things that occur, because those are the actual problems.
Derek, I think when I'm hearing you say that, what I like to see is I like to see money as a mirror. It's a reflection rather than a measurement. And that's what I'm hearing in what you're saying. Did I get it right?
Um, I think I think from my perspective, like a lot of the stuff, a lot of the work that you're talking about is detaching a lot of stuff from the concept of money. And once you've detached those things, it becomes much more easy to operate effectively in a world that still uses money. But there's a lot of things like if I take money, I'm dependent. Like that's a belief that people have. I don't, there are people that I don't want to be controlled, so I'm not going to get a job, or I'm worth more, or I'm not worth anything. I mean, so there's all kinds of judgments that people have and beliefs about themselves. And rather than seeing the filter with which they're viewing money, they're seeing money. And to me, there's a real need to get some get some separation because uh, money isn't the money isn't really a problem. It like there's access to money. I mean, there's a ton of abuses around money. There's a whole bunch of problems, but in the abstract, money is okay, here's $1, here's $10. It's an exchange. I did some work, I got some money, you did some work, I'm giving you some money. Like there's a simplicity to it that can exist, but doesn't currently exist. So that's kind of how I see it. And so but I think the idea that, in a perfect world there wouldn't be money. I mean, you could like you have to like to me you'd have to have a world where there aren't exchanges, and I wouldn't want that. Like I'd still want to have a mechanism of exchange that's articulatable. And money does it. There could be something else, but so that's I guess the idea is, if you look at it that way, it'll kind of reveal like, okay, what are the actual problems? What are the things that need to be integrated? Um, and I'll stop there.
Thank you. Thank you, Derek. Before we go to Jacob, how about, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but how about Mary B or Arthur or Mars or Christine or Carla? And Sherry, did you have any thoughts on the topic at all? You don't have to say anything if there's nothing that comes up, but I'd love to hear your voice in the room if you are wanting to share something and you're a little shy. Sometimes if there's introverts among the crowd, I feel like I need to sort of give you permission to speak. I know I'm an introvert and I always like to be invited to speak. So yeah, Arthur, is that
My idea on money is just it's a means to an end, and I just try to accumulate what I need to have financial freedom.
Mhm.
And there's a survival need as well, having
Mhm.
food, shelter, and things like that, and money provides that.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Arthur. I appreciate hearing that. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'll speak. I'm newly an entrepreneur, and it's not something that like I ever aspired to be or wanted to do. I also have this idea of like polypreneurship where we're supporting each other and signposting to each other because I'm not a one-stop shop. I'd rather be, part of a team. And I'm also working with people in what I think are like innovative, supportive ways. And so, but having not done it before, like what's the value of it? And it being new, it's not considered as valuable as something that's tried and true and tested. And then also I'm experientially new. And so having a really difficult time putting a dollar value on what I'm trying to do, but also recognizing like I do value. So I'm a mother of four, and I was a stay at home and then a work at home mom for some time. And then I left my X. And I mean, part of that was a financial thing. But it's meant that I'm in the workforce differently now. And I grew up highly valuing a mother's work, which is generally not, monetarily valued. And so I have like a sense of value in what I contribute, in what I bring, and I don't know how to, put a dollar value on that. And I love working. I love working. I don't care if it's shoveling gravel. I don't care if it's cleaning toilets, rocking babies, coaching people, like washing dishes, driving. I love working so much. All different kinds of work, manual labor, emotional work, and selling myself feels like death. Like trying to find clients just so that I can keep my apartment. It's like it sucks. And, it's like I spend so much time selling myself. I don't actually get to work. It doesn't feel like work selling my, and if I could just say like, I mean, honestly, it's like I love people. I have to figure out how to get money for loving people, I get, and I don't, yeah, it feels like just soul crushing, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Mary V. I really appreciate you sharing that. And I hear that a lot, that I love work and I feel like I'm selling my soul, for money. And there's a kind of a sense of that if I embrace this money thing, that it's going to taint my essence, or it's going to taint my values, or going to taint my art or my work in some ways, And so please chat with me afterwards. I'd love to chat more to you about this, we can have a look and see what we can discover there and make it a little bit more easeful for you around that. So I appreciate you sharing. I really do. Thank you. Well, we have 4 minutes left, and I want to respect your time and your energy. And thank you very much for showing up. And please reach out to me. I'm happy to chat with you if you want to do a little bit more further exploration around this topic. And yeah, lots of love to all of you.
Karen,
Yes.
may I just mention, I just put in for North American people, it will be Sunday at around midday. I put in a session for discussing financing of residential intentional communities, and then for kind of mid-afternoon, if you're in North America, on Monday, I'm putting in a session about self-employment. And also following that, just a discussion about money marketing and how to survive doing creative, impactful work. So I invite any of you to continue this discussion then.
Thank you so much, Ardell. Thank you for your generosity and for saying that. Did you put that in the chat, did you say?
Oh, I didn't, it's in the calendar. So,
Okay.
and,
Great.
and yeah, I will pop in the resource I mentioned around lists of grants and the financing options. I'll pop that into the chat right now.
Okay, well, have a beautiful rest of your evening or day wherever you are, and I'll hope to connect with you during the next month and the next few weeks.
Thank you everyone for sharing, and thank you, Karen.
Welcome.